Was St. Joan of Arc woke? Was she possibly non-binary? This and other issues will be opened up in this episode as we tackle the trans ideology and this great French saint. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Way of Wonder. Hashtag WOW. I'm here with Father Patrick Schultz, my dear friend from the Midwest, from Ohio, Wadsworth in particular, the Shire of the Midwest.
That's right, the Shire of the Midwest.
It's great to see you, Father Pat.
You too, Bill. I like the hashtag WOW.
Yeah, I just thought, we have to get that trending, and we haven't mentioned that in a while. So back to the Way of Wonder. Right. This is where Father Pat and I kind of, we tarry a bit in the great world of creativity and art and beauty and things that move us, we hope move you. And so this week's episode is going to be my turn. And we are in the holy octave of St. Patrick, We're in the great octave of the great Patrick himself.
High holy feast.
The holy man who drove all the snakes out of Ireland. Although
those poor snake
physically
farmers.
Maybe, but yeah, those poor snake farmers, they lost millions. But that was anyway. My art today is actually not going to be. It's going to be a French painter, and the subject is a French saint. So, sorry, St. Patrick. What I want to do, What I want to do is dive into a painting that deeply moved me. My first encounter before we do the big reveal. I was walking down. I was on a trip from college to the Met in New York. So this great Metropolitan Museum of Art, beautiful. And so I'm like 18, 19 years old, going between floors, meandering through this amazing museum. And in a stairwell, I saw this great painting. And I've mentioned this, I think, on a previous episode. Now I'm going to show the painting that I encountered. So in a stairwell, I saw this great work.
Oh, yeah.
Saint Joan of Arc.
Jeanne d'Arc.
Jeanne d'Arc, pretty much life-size. This is a very large canvas, painted in 1879 by Jules Bastien Lepage, a French artist. And I was so struck when I first encountered the work. I just loved the lush garden. This is supposed to be her parents' backyard, the garden of their backyard. I was struck by the life-size figure of Joan, and we're going to do some zoom-ins. She's got just a beautiful face with eyes that are unbelievably blue. There they are.
Woo!
And she is in that raptured moment of hearing the voices of three saints. So she's having these locutions. She's having this encounter with heaven. There's Saint Michael, who's in the shrubs behind her. And then we have a couple other saints. If you look in the top left corner, you can see them.
Yeah.
Michael, Saint Margaret, and Saint Catherine of Siena, who revealed themselves to Joan of Arc. And so there it is, a gorgeous painting. I'm gonna read a little bit more about it real quick, and then we'll have your response, Father Pat.
Yeah.
Joan of Arc, the medieval teenaged martyr from the French province of Lorraine, gained new status as a patriotic symbol when France ceded part of the territory to the German Empire after the Franco-Prussian War, 1870. Bastien Lepage, a native of Lorraine, depicts the moment when Saints Michael, Margaret, and Catherine appear to the peasant girl in her parents' garden, rousing her to fight the English invaders in the 100 Years' War. Critics of the Salon of 1880 praised Bastien Lepage's use of pose and facial expression to convey Joan's spiritual awakening. And here comes the criticism, but found the inclusion of the saints at odds with his naturalistic style. That's a write-up from the Met's website, so the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I don't think there's anything odd about it. There they are. There's a good zoom in. Thanks, Thomas. I think it's quite mystical.
Yeah.
So as you look at this,
he's in armor. That's cool.
Oh, it's very cool. Yeah, and he's got his sword pointed out as well, sort of this call to arms for Joan to take up the battle. So as we look at the big picture again, if you want to zoom out, Thomas, and you know a little bit about the story of Joan, What does
Yeah.
this kindle in you? What's it kind of stirring up as you look at this?
Well, man, a few things. I think that I can't stop looking away from her. I can imagine you walking through this stairwell
Oh
and
yeah,
just being transfixed by
yeah.
her and wanting to, like, as the viewer, I want to see what she's suddenly catching a glimpse of. You know,
Mm,
um, I'm being drawn into her contemplation, right? Contemplating the piece is being drawn into her contemplation.
yeah.
I think it's interesting too, just artistically, that so he's depicting the moment where she is having these locutions with these heavenly figures,
Mm-hmm.
and like she's looking up clearly into the light of glory. That's like, or just this moment where she's attentive to something, and he's placed those figures totally behind her.
Yeah.
It's just a
Right.
very interesting artistic choice, as if to say, like, I don't know. I just think about how I experience
Mm.
God in contemplation, and it's like I'm looking at, like, what are you looking at? I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know where I'm looking.
Yeah.
I just know He's like the presence of God is here amongst me. Um,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
love how she looks too. Like
Yeah.
there's a serenity about her, and you also see, like, um, I could see. Like, I just see, like, Theoden as he's being, like, dressed with his armor. Just like she looks like she's ready for
Yeah.
the battle armor.
That's what
I don't know.
when I was going
There's
to
a
jump
lot
in
there.
when you said that they're behind her. That's where I went. She's being called
Yeah.
forth, right? So they're the encouragers behind her, and even just her. So Michael's got his sword pointing out, pointing towards her, but also beyond her to the battle, and she's got that left arm stretching out to it. Can you zoom in on that arm, Thomas, and what she's? Yeah. So her hand is reaching out and just beautifully, delicately touching these leaves, which I just think is a beautiful detail there. But so it's the stretching out, it's the longing, it's the calling, and it's just so earthy. Everything about it is very grounded, rooted in a real lush background, and she's awakening to it, right? To this call to step forth. Can we see her face again, Thomas, too? Now, I think it's just unbelievably beautiful. People were first seeing this painting back in, the better part of the 1800s. They were very captured by the model who did Joan. Like, they just thought, this is the face. This is a face of, there's an innocence, but there's also a deep awareness. She's in touch and called. And you can see, too, just those eyes. You can see heaven in those eyes. They're just so wide and so alert.
Mm-hmm.
But Joan may have been around 12
Yeah.
or so when she first heard the voices. So very young.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yep, around 12. So I want to step
Wow.
into, obviously the visuals of this great painting. But I want to go a little further. I want to, we often apply theology of the body. We talk about the teaching of John Paul the Great and
Yeah.
his great love for art too. I mean, him always saying how art is a bridge to religious experience, and art is this embodiment. It's it's canvas, it's pigment, it's paint, it's wood, stone, whatever. And I want to open it up a little bit into talking about the figure of Joan, because these days there's swirling controversies on the topic of gender. Have you heard anything about gender these days, Father Pat?
No, I live mostly in this basement, so I don't hear much about what's going on
Okay, well, there's a lot going on.
out in the world.
And sometimes we have these great saints who embody certain virtues or have these aspirations. And in our confused day today around gender identity, sometimes these great
Sure,
saints, I'm
yeah.
thinking of two in particular, kind of get hijacked. Joan's been a bit hijacked. Saint Therese of Lisieux has been a bit hijacked. She has in her autobiography this. Do you remember the part where Therese of Lisieux was talking about, I want to be the greatest apostle, I want to be the greatest missionary, I want to be a priest?
Uh-huh.
And that has been sort of lifted and said, see, so there should be women priests. So it's controversial. It's like, I don't know that that's exactly what Therese was saying, that she wanted to be like, I think she's talking about like the fire of the priest, the victimhood of the priest, the self-giving of the priest.
Yeah.
So this is not going to make you happy when I read it anyway. Last year, the London Globe Theatre put on a play on Joan of Arc.
Oh boy.
Legendary French heroine Joan of Arc will be portrayed as non-binary in a radical departure from the historic figure's usual depiction. It goes on. The new interpretation of her life will be performed at the theater that was home to famed British playwright William Shakespeare. So, wow, this is like holy ground. Non-binary actor Isabel Tome will play the role in the play I, Joan. So I, Joan. Scripted with they and them pronouns by Charlie Josephine, who is also non-binary. The Globe said in a news release. It will be directed by Ilinka Radulian, who identifies as a woman. Our story of Joan is full of joy and hope and love and magic and revolution, Tome told NBC News by email on Saturday. Okay, there's one more bit that I'll read in a minute, but I know, again, this is a hot mess, but is it important that we talk about this, the fact that Joan was an actual woman? And what does it mean to say that she's a woman?
Yeah.
God called this young woman.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's robbing her of her. First of all, it's robbing her of her particularity and turning her into this sort of ideological thing. Like, she was a woman, a little girl at 12 years old who began having these experiences, who in her femininity, her particularity, her personhood was called into this incredible mission.
Yeah.
That like a woman is called into this mission. She is called into this mission. And I'm thinking about all the amazing women throughout the Bible, especially throughout the Old Testament, who are called into incredibly heroic moments of salvation history. Like that Joan is one among many women who wielded weapons, who did things that typically men do. But she is the one who did them. And it's like there's a forked tongue speaking here that says at the same time, we don't appreciate stereotypes. Those are horrible and terrible. At the same time, let's buy into stereotypes,
Right.
It's when we're speaking about gender and masculinity and femininity, these things are deep and so significant. So yeah, it's important that we talk about this.
I'm agreeing with you here because I feel like, and I want to invite anybody who's tuning in, and I think we have a crowd who's been following us now for months and kind of know where we're all coming from. But if anybody's tuning in because of the topic or have found it or stumbled into it, we're saying here, let's celebrate the gift of Joan in her particularity as a woman. Because, this idea that, well, now she's non-binary or the woman doesn't matter, it's a non-thing, that's actually an affront to, as you said, woman. Yeah. Right? It's really an erasure of the significance of woman. Joan is so significant because she brought her feminine gift to the battle. And you can't do it any other way. Like, that's what makes Joan so unique in this call and vocation. And what you said, Father Pat, I agree with. You can go back into our salvation history and see figures like Judith comes to mind, in the Old Testament, who fought the Assyrian Holofernes, I think it was, who, lobbed off his head and won a great victory. You've got incredible characters like Rahab who are like savior figures for the people of Israel. Yeah. You got the Blessed Mother who, she's the queen, and she's really a warrior queen. And those are important titles and characteristics in her womanhood, and all of them in their womanhood, they shine all the more brightly. I'm a little surprised that we don't have more kickback from feminists today when we see this kind of erasure. International Women's Day was a week or so ago, and a biological male was awarded at the White House from Argentina, who now identifies as a woman on International Women's Day. How do women not sort of say, hey, wait, we're being displaced here.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, yeah. Even the phrase biological male, it's just like,
Yeah,
that it was a
we never
man.
used to talk that way. We never had to. We simply said
Yeah.
man or woman.
Yeah.
So let's go back into the painting, Thomas, for a second. The zoom out and see the full piece. Just anybody tuning in, listening, this is so important. Okay, we are embodied. And in this lush painting by Jules Bastien-Lepage, we have Joan in her femininity, in her beauty, resting in a rich earth, stretching out, touching leaves, surrounded by the smell of this garden and the breeze through the trees. Like it's so important to identify in our bodies. Like this is us. We often teach at the Institute, right? You don't have a body, you are a body. You
Yeah.
don't have a body, you are a body. Saying I have it as if it's a possession of mine, that's where the shift starts to happen. And that's where we start to feel the ground underneath us start to crumble away. I love this painting because of its earthiness, its embodiment, and the shining beauty of Joan in her feminine mystery. That's her identity. And I want this to be like a reclaiming of that
Yeah.
call and gift.
And I think about by casting her as this non-binary person, it's as if to say that like the person who did these deeds, it couldn't have been just a woman, right? That these are manly things and they can't be done by a woman. Like there's, John Paul II speaks about the feminine genius and implicitly the masculine genius, right? And there are, when you look at masculinity, when you look at the language of the body of the man it's incarnating the outward initiating active dimensionality of God, who is the initiator, creator, redeemer, right? The one who pours forth the gift of superabundant life. All of that is written into the male body. And the woman's body is the incarnation of creaturely receptivity, the one who opens to receive and conceive and then bear forth life. But these gifts of activity and receptivity are not exclusive to the man and to the woman, right? That integration is necessary in both. That Mary, who is the perfect vessel of receptivity, the moment that she has received the word from Gabriel, what does she then do? She goes forth in powerful activity to go to the hill country of Judah. I was just in Jerusalem. I just was in the hill country of Judah. And let me tell you, it's hilly. You got to be strong to go to the hill country of Judah. So and Jesus, the ultimate man, right? The ultimate incarnation of gift, of protector, provider, all of those things. What does he say what does he say in his humanity? I don't do anything on my own. I only do what I hear the Father telling me. I only say what I hear the Father saying. Like he is always perfectly receptive to the Father. So in both Jesus and Mary, you see this integration of activity and receptivity possessed by both, but I would say in an asymmetric way. So Joan of Arc is a woman who, look at how receptive she is in that painting, in that call, in that mission. And birth from that is powerful activity that was a specific mission that God gave her. That she was like another, as we said, these great women figures of the Old Testament, like Jael, who drove that tent peg through Sisera's head,
Yeah, that's another.
It's always the defeat of the wicked one through the woman, through the handmaid. It always happens that way. So I think that this, you think about, women who aren't necessarily called to liberate their country from the English, the average soccer mom. She has a whole life of receptivity as a mom, as a woman, but think about how much activity, going forth. Like, I think about my parents when we used to do road trips together. Like, they both were preparing for the trip for our family. my dad, his domain in some ways was the world outside of the car, right? Thinking about the route and the things and how we're going to pack things on top of the car and what do we need to bring and where are we mapping our destination, all those things. My
The
mom,
oil
it was the
change,
world
all of it.
within her was with the world within the car, right?
Beautiful.
Activity in both, receptivity in both. It's just asymmetric. It looks different. Yeah, I just think this phenomenon, this transgender phenomenon, it really could use a healthy dose of Christian anthropology
I
and
agree.
this vision of integration, because
Yeah.
that's what we're called to.
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
Oh, I love it. No, stay on the soapbox. Or let's just make the soapbox the world itself, everywhere we stand, right? That's what we have to do. Let me read one quote from the end of this write-up on this play that happened that was debuting last year. And then go back to the remedy of what you just beautifully laid out, Father Pat. So back into the dysfunction and dysphoria, I believe, that unmoors us from our bodies and from reality, really. Imagining Joan as a they-them is an exercise in placing Joan in the modern day, connecting Joan's struggles against the forces of oppression with today. Now, the forces of oppression with today. So this idea that like there's oppression today, just like Joan had. And I have to say, like, I don't think so. Like the battlefield, the blood, the the swords drawn. So this is one of those, again, a healthy dose of reality and anthropology, but really reality. I think if we're stuck in our Twitter feeds and TikToks and we're staring at that to discover our identity, the answer is, well, actually go stand in a garden for a while. Go work on a farm. Go see the world and the dynamics of interaction between things, which is, as you just pointed out in the archetypal sense, giving and receiving. It's literally everywhere. And as embodied beings, male and female, we're rooted in the middle of this dance between giving and receiving, right? Seeds going forth, then gestating, taken in and received in the world and gestated out to become gift again. I really do feel that things like non-binary are so deeply inhuman. Okay, so everybody listen objectively to this, right? To say non-binary, you're a ghost haunting the world. You're a spirit wandering, looking for... We used to be horrified by things like that, ghost stories of the spirit who can't land anywhere. To say non-binary sounds more like, sadly, a prisoner who's at odds with their own body and with reality. So I know this is an intense chat, but back to the image, Thomas, if we could. The saints were embodied. They were like living flames of love, men and women, particular people right there in their time, culture, space, and they're always like a light. They're always a light. Joan was a light. And she was a feminine gift to the world, and she moved men and women. And, if she embodied certain masculine virtues, that doesn't make her a biological male. It means she could find that balance of tenderness and openness and receptivity. But as you said, Father Pat, the fire of activity and missionary work, she could do it. And we're all called, men and women, to integrate both of those spheres, right? To bring them together with God's grace. So Saint Joan of Arc, pray for us. Final thoughts, Father Pat. Anything else?
Yeah, here's the final thought I was thinking about when you just were reading that last quote about, kind of lifting the story of Joan and setting it into this modern time. Like this is the great error of deconstructionism, which is just rampant in our, especially in academia today, that things don't have meaning in themselves. Words don't have meaning in themselves other than what we bring to it. And it's like, this is the great gift that, in many ways, like John Paul II's Theology of the Body, which is grounded in Aristotelian Thomistic metaphysics, which is, I'm getting nerdy here, but it's all coming through this phenomenological lens, right? So this phenomenology is that was that school of philosophy that kind of blossomed in the 20th century as everything was crumbling. This vision of reality was coming back up to the surface that said, no, things have meaning. Let things speak. Like, let the thing reveal itself. which is why I love how Joan is, again, in this garden, as you were saying, get back in touch with reality, let reality speak. You
Mm.
know, any 3-year-old walking through the zoo, if you ask a 3-year-old which of those is the mommy horse, be able to identify it because the thing speaks,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and somehow we miss all that.
Mm.
Most of us don't live in places that look like Joan's backyard, not in touch
That's
with
true.
reality. So again, back to the great remedy of how about we spend some time sitting at the base of a tree
Yeah.
for a little bit to get back in touch with what's real.
Awesome. There's our Axio as we close out this episode. And spring is a few weeks away. It's an invitation, and I think this is an iconic image for all of us. This invitation to get out, to open palmed, encounter the world, let it speak, and that phenomenology. I love you bringing up phenomenology. Letting nature say its word to us, and in humility,
Yeah.
receiving the word. And this is self-exploration of us, or of our own bodies, and the bodies of others, and the whole dynamic of nature and how it works. Just let it speak. Don't aggressively try to, make it say something else, right? Let it speak. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And the Lord, if you're in a place of confusion and dysphoria, anybody tuning in, again, maybe you stumbled onto this. The antidote here is the quiet heart that listens. And maybe it's not just listening to the now moment and creation and other people, but listen to what has happened in your past. Go back and say, where do these thoughts come from? What was my experience, the phenomena of my life? And bring the Lord into that and say, like, Lord, reveal the truth to me. Help me understand my mission. We can hear a lot of different voices in the culture today, but they can flow from very discordant places. So Joan's hearing voices from heaven. So those voices that Joan hears from heaven are always affirming, encouraging, speaking the truth in love. And I really feel like that's the kind of stuff we listen to. That's what we can trust in and rest in.
Yeah.
All right. Father Pat, thanks for jumping on board for this episode. I'm looking forward to next week when you'll unveil something wonderful for us in this journey. So thanks everybody again for tuning in. We love when you share and like and comment below, so please do so. This again was Jules Bastien-Lepage, a great work, Joan of Arc, that's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and we'll put information about that in the comments below. Have a great day.